Hello, I'm Nick, and this is Today in Philosophy of History for Thursday, 19 December 2024. Today is a big day for Today in Philosophy of History because I have my first guest, and so I'd like you to welcome Mohadeseh Jazaei. And sorry if I mispronounced that. I asked how to pronounce it correctly, but now I've already forgotten the correct pronunciation of the last name. So Mohadeseh holds a PhD in political science and is a former assistant professor at Tehran University in Iran. She is the author of The Missed Opportunity of Parliament in Iran, which explores the intersections of modernity, governance, and traditional society in Iran through the lens of conceptual history. Following the women life freedom movement in Iran, she was compelled to leave her academic position and now resides in Canada as an independent researcher. Her work focuses on women's studies in the Middle East, feminist theory, conceptual history, and the constitutional revolution in Iran. Her research sheds light on the role of women in political movements, the evolution of feminist thought in the region, and the historical the historical tensions between modern institutions and traditional frameworks in Iranian society. So, welcome, Mohad.
Hello, Nick. Hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity, and I'm glad to be here.
And thank you for agreeing to come on the show. And so, can you start out by giving me a little background on Iran's constitutional revolution from 1877 to 1905?
Oh, well, thank you for your questions. It's a so hard questions because the Iranian history is so rich and constitutional revolution as an important event in the contemporary history of Iran. So important. Oh, this revolution, somebody consider as a movement, but it doesn't matter. I called it revolution because it was. These revolutions aimed at limiting autocratic rules and establishing a modern constitutional monarchy. It resulted in the creation of first parliament. Of course, I said majlis as a Persian word, and important part of that drafting of constitutions. The revolution was driven by a coalition of merchants, intellectuals, reformists, whom wants to balance traditional Islamic principles with Western-inspired governance, and it's an important part in this revolution. While it introduced significant reform, it also faced challenges from internal divisions and foreign interventions.
Had there been a constitution prior to 1877, or was it just a straight up monarchy?
Oh, it's in the life of this revolution was so short because after that, of course, there are many debates about the outcome of this revolution, but I think it was unfinished because it caught by the autocratic rules again in the Pahlavi period, and after that, Islamic revolution. And as you say, we are encounter in the new movement, Women Life Freedom. And I think this movement continuation of these revolutions, and it's unfinished, I think. And I hope the outcome of it was a freedom and democracy in Iran.
So, when does the women life freedom movement begin? Does that begin with the constitutional revolution, or this is something relatively recent?
The woman life freedom as a movement in Iran emerged as a powerful response to systematic gender inequalities and violations of basic human rights in Iran. Of course, it is sparked by the tragic death of a Kurdish girl in Iran in September 2022. While this movement represents a contemporary struggle, I personally believe its roots can be traced back over a century to the constitutional revolution. During that period, concepts of justice, freedom, individual rights, representations, and blah blah began to challenge traditional power structures and planting the seeds for the ongoing fight for equality and democracy, and this fight continuing. And I think the women life freedom movement in many ways built on the unfinished work of the constitutional revolution, continuing the historical trajectory of resistance and demand for fundamental rights in Iran.
Do you see your own work as being part of the women life freedom movement?
Yeah, yes, of
So,
course.
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just yes.
How would you describe conceptual history as you have used it in your work?
Um, about conceptual history, as you maybe know, Iran has a rich background, and I think Iranian history is uniquely suited to conceptual history because of its frequent encounters with ideological and cultural transformations. As Iranian, we, throughout the history, has served as a meeting point between civilization, for example, ancient Persian, Islamic, and modern Western influences, and even postmodernism ideas. And these interactions have led to interpretation and reinterpretation and adoption of concepts such as justice, nationhood, freedom, individual right, law. And I think the tension between traditional Islamic frameworks and imported Western ideas during critical period like the Constitutional Revolution exemplified the power of conceptual shift in driving historical change. And according to this fact, conceptual history can be considered as a method and lens for analyzes the story.
And you see this as an ongoing process of conceptual change in contemporary Iran?
Yeah, of course, yes. I personally believe that the conceptual history ideas, for example, Koselleck, which I focus on, and it can be shown temporality and historical emergence of concepts, and it provides a powerful lens to analyze the political events like constitutional revolution. In particular, during this period, some new concepts emerged. When I say new concepts, I mean, for example, parliament, which I focus on, freedom, justice. This new word entered to Iranian society and create a clash between Western political ideals and traditional Islamic and Persian frameworks. And with the conceptual history, we can emphasize on the tension between concept and counter-concept, and it allows us to understand how these ideas were contested, interpreted, reinterpreted, integrated, and so on. And we can found that how to reshape governance and social expectations in Iranian history.
Do you see a relationship between the kind of careful contextualism of what's sometimes called the Cambridge School, is associated with J.G.A. Pocock and Quentin Skinner? Do you see a relationship between that and conceptual history?
Oh, about my personal experience, as you maybe know, in Iran, because of some censorship, we couldn't, and now this process, this is ongoing. Unfortunately, there are censorship, and we are not the internet connection correctly. But first of all, as a political science student, I start with Michel Foucault and Skinner, whose works provided a valuable insight into relationship between power, language, and historical concepts. And I think there is a strong relationship between the contextualism of the Cambridge School and conceptual history. Because both approaches, as far as I know, emphasize the importance of historical context in understanding ideas and concepts. While Cambridge School focus on the intentions and argument of historical actors, conceptual history focus on the concepts, and I prefer focus on the concepts instead of the actors.
Mhm.
But together they offer understanding of the interplay between language, ideas, and historical change, and this field can enrich each other.
Were the works of Koselleck available in Iran and in translation into Farsi, or did you read them in English?
Oh,
German.
I try to learn the Deutsch, German language to understand the Koselleck, and I dedicated 3 years to learn the Deutsch and German to write the text. In particular, some important works of Koselleck in, was in German. But
Yeah.
now I think one book of Koselleck translate to Persian. But 4 years ago, no, there was no any text to Persian from the Koselleck. And after that, I introduced it, and some professor in university in history field introduced the Koselleck. And after that, it's a known name among the Iranian scholars. Fortunately,
Do you remember how you happened to hear about Koselleck and what got you interested in that?
yeah, I found the name of Koselleck among the interview from Skinner. And after that, I was curious about the name of the Koselleck and his works. I don't know why Skinner named the Koselleck, but I found that I need a more focused micro level lens to analyze the specific evolution of concept in depth. And when found the Koselleck works and read his text, wow, this is my method and my way to read the books and analyzes the historical work and documents from the constitutional revolution in Iran. Because my field is not history, but the political science in Iran intertwined the history. There are a strong connection between them, and the political theory are in the macro level, not micro. And this lens helps me to find some integration between the concepts and counter concepts and the struggle between the political groups. And it was amazing.
What particular works by Koselleck made a big impression on you?
Concepts and counter concepts. When Koselleck speak about the counter concepts, it's so impressive. And mm, Koselleck differentiation between concept and counter concept led me to conceptual history. I mean, as a big theory. I found not only practical for understanding historical processes. I don't know why, surprisingly neglected in many areas of scholarship, while its ability to uncover the dynamic of social change through the concepts. And I think it's a tool in a research. Um, uh, mm, mm, you know, mm, the Koselleck and history of concept or conceptual history give me an attitude, a vision to how to read the text. For example, the history in Iran is so complicated because, for example, when you speak about the some word like constitutions, and there are different meanings of constitutional, and nobody knows when, for example, 100 years ago, the scholars and the reformists used this word. What's the meaning of this word?
Mhm.
And this differentiation between the layer of history, it was confusing. And the conceptual history helped the researchers to find the emergence of the word, for example, the meaning of of the specific context and how to shape the political sphere and how to make organization and institutions. About my work about parliament, for example, the first reformist in Iran entered the word of parliament from the England and say the parliament of or House of Commons. And when Iranian encounter with this word, they say, "Oh, we had Majlis. We are, uh, they said it's a familiar word for us and try to adjust and adapt this word. But it was in the wrong way because the parliament in England once still limited the power of king. But in Iran, the parliament or Majlis wants to give some advice to the king, not limited him. And the differences between two approaches and two concepts is so important. And conceptual history teach us consider this differentiation. And it was amazing for me because I found that the meaning of the concepts and the meaning, the clash and the tension between concepts are so crucial. And we have to consider that during our research without the focus on this, without focus on the meaning of the concept in the context, we may be, lost our way and make mistake, like many researchers in our country.
Was parliament used as a loan word for a while, or so you had both the word parliament and majlis side by side, and
Yeah,
it was
or
causing people confusion.
yeah. Exactly. And it was amazing. Today we have some modern organization and in political institution in our country, like parliament, or for example, presidential institutions, but they don't represent the democracy. They use by the support power and they suppress people and they are not the sign of democracy. And I think this was stemmed from the concept after a constitutional revolution because we shape and we entered the new modern institution, political concept, political institution. But, the fundamental of functional of that is wrong in our country because this misunderstanding. We don't understand what is the purpose of established parliament. We want to limit the power of king, or we want to have give some advice to him how to suppress the people, how to restrict the people, how to how to hurt them. It's not true, and it's not the first purpose of the establishment of the modern institution. And I try to, in my work, bullet these differences between parliament and majlis. And I want to say that the majlis in Iran, uh, it's there is no similarity between parliament and majlis, and it's a wrong way to want to achieve to democracy and freedom. And we can't, with these institutions and organization, achieve to the democracy or the individual rights.
So you still have those two forces present and side by side of the traditionalist forces. Well, what I'm interpreting what you're saying as being the traditionalist forces of the Majlis, who are
Yeah,
there to help the king do whatever he wants, even if there's
yeah,
not a king anymore.
yeah.
And then there's the other forces uh, of a parliamentary type of system.
Yeah, I think the Western ideas of parliaments or modern institution wants to help to people and protect them against the power of king. But in Iranian history, uh, it's so paradoxical because this institution helped to power, helped to king and the governors to restrict the people, and it's the wrong way. And I once, with the conceptual history, show how the meaning of the concepts and use of these concepts to shape the structures can be wrong way and it can be considered as a mistake in the historical way. And we have to change the way. And I think that the new movement and new generation in Iran found that it doesn't work, and we have to we have to establishment a new organization, new institution, as NGOs, as a online platform, online attack to the power. And I think the future is better than no.
So you've been talking about conflicts between traditionalism and modernity. How did modernity begin to manifest itself in Iran? When does it start to appear, and is there any inflection point when it becomes much more powerful as a political and historically shaping force?
In Iran, modernity arrived as an external force during the 19th and early 20th century, primarily throughout interaction between European powers. Unlike in Europe and West, where modernity evolved internally through the Enlightenment and industrialization, Iran's encounter with modernity was abrupt and often imposed. And this condition led to debates on how to reconcile Western ideas such as constitutionalism, individual rights, secular governance, and so on, with deeply rooted traditions and religious framework. And I think some events like constitutional revolution exemplified this struggle as Iranians thought to adopt modern institutions to fit their cultural and historical realities. We can escape from the historical realities and the thick cultural layers in our history. And this import ideas has affected us, and we have to react to that. And the constitutional revolution, and after that, too, we have to cope. And after that, Islamic revolution, and now women life freedom movement. All of this is a react to the modernity with import to Iran.
So, to your knowledge, were there any Enlightenment texts that were translated into Persian, or did it all just come suddenly at the end of the 19th century, more or less?
Hmm. My pardon, I
Uh,
don't understand
the were the
the exact question.
so you mentioned that the process of modernity begins to be felt in Iran in the late 19th century. So were there any earlier books from the European Enlightenment that were translated into Persian before that time, or is it just basically nothing before that time?
Yeah. Yeah, first of all, the first group as a student went to Europe to learn, and after that, teach the kings and the successor, the new modern ideas. Because in the Qajar periods, 200 years ago, they had failure from Russia, and after that, they lose their priorities and boundaries. For example, there are many, I don't know how to say, there are many failure in political sphere. And they ask these questions, why we can't be success in our war with the Russians, for example, or
Mm.
French. And this is a big questions. Why we were weak and others power, because, for example, the Russia army used the weapons, and the Iranians didn't have any technology. In particular, they asked some questions about the roots of this. For example, I don't know how to say about, for example, backwardness, I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. The question was, why is there a ruse, the reason of backwardness? And they couldn't answer these big questions. And then set some students to West to England and French to learn the new methods. And they're familiar with the French code or constitution. And after that, they said, wow, the Europe and the West had a code for limitation of the power. They had, for example, the new factories. They saw the industrial zone in the, for example, England, and they impressed, of course, impressed. And after that, they want to establish some new method in Iran, but there are many obstacles for that. First of all, the kings, because they know if the new technology intern to Iran, import to Iran, they can't govern the people. And the struggle between the reformist and traditionalism start from the 19th century in Iran. And up to now, this struggle continues. I don't know why. There are many traditionalist scholar in Iran. They defend of the, for example, Islamic roots, Persian civilization, and so on. They rejected the new method to understand the world. They don't want to be connect with the other countries because they're afraid of the origin of the cultural matters. But I think it's not the right fact. And this this fear stems from the loss of the power. They don't want to lose their power, not, for example, the cultural or political things.
That
It's
you have an analogous tension to what's happened in many countries, including the West, of wanting the technology because that makes you effective in warfare, but not wanting the revolutionary political ideas that threaten the ruling class.
Yeah, of course. Traditionalism in Iran is so complicated because it's reflect a synthesis of pre-Islamic Persian heritage and Islamic influences. And it's so complicated. It's not easy, for example, to handle it. Iranian traditionalism, and I personally think during the history it has shown remarkable adaptability, as seen during the constitutional revolution, and where traditional notions of justice, for example, were reinterpreted alongside modern political ideals. But the traditionalist group afraid of the losing of their power because with the new modern ideas, with the new modern technologies, with the new modern attitude to the world, they can't govern to the people, and it's the big fear for them.
How greatly was that affected by the deposition of the Shah and the institution of the Islamic Republic? So now you no longer have the Majlis as somebody advising the king, but you have instead a council of guardians and a president, but you still have the same traditionalist forces that are part of the mix of the political culture.
Mm, Oh, it's a good question, but so hard to answer. There are many debates among Iranian scholars about Shah and Sheikh. I say the mullah, and I see after constitutional revolutions, the history in Iran is repetitive, and the king there is no differences between which say king or the sheikh or mullah. There is no differences. Oh, I know the king, the Pahlavi period, the kings in Iran was secular, and the Islamic Republic uh, was an alternative for the secular. It was the Islamic rules. But all of this period in Iran, there is no rule. We don't witness the rule of law. It was a king, a first person, the head of the regime, and after that, the other political institution and the other modern ideas serve the first person in the head of the regime. And there is no differences between Shah and Sheikh in Iran, unfortunately. Unfortunately, and according to this fact, I said the constitutional revolution in Iran unfinished, and maybe in the future, after women life freedom and the other change in Iran, we can establish modern institutions, a modern governance. It will be secular, of course. It will be democrat will be, and I hope we can forecast the future. But I think during this period, we couldn't say, wow, the Pahlavi's period or the Shah in Iran was a golden age in Iran. I don't believe that because we read the documentation and we saw the history. There is no democratic way to consider the people votes or, for example, individual rights. There is no sphere for the people, and the kings and was the core of any decisions. And after that, after Islamic revolutions, the Wali Faqih or the Sheikh was the core of the making decision. There is no differences between them. And I think the democratic way in Iran is absent after 6 years of just in 6 years in constitutional revolution. We can say yes, Iranian try to establish the modern and democratic institution, but it's unfinished. I don't want to say the failure because I think the Iranian tries as in some ways to establish them, but it's
Well, you suggested earlier it's basically for the past century it's been a cyclical process where
yeah,
some influences come in and there's some change and development, and then there's presumably a reaction against this, and then you have to start over if you want further reforms.
yeah.
You mentioned earlier that there were Persian students who went to Europe to bring back some of these ideas. And in our correspondence prior to this, you said that there were travelers who were responsible for idea diffusion within Iran. Could you talk about that some?
Oh, travelers in Iran and um, if I explain about the role of the travelers and the ideas that import by them, it's different scope that they supported and covered in any field and any major. They try to import some new things because they want to progress for their country, of course. Um, I don't know. I don't know how to explain that, but I trace the new words, new concepts, which they import to the Iranian intellectual sphere, and it was amazing. And for example, amazing, and some in some context, it's so funny. They didn't know anything about the political sphere in Europe. They don't know anything about for example, regulations, the meaning of the words, because they don't have any translators or other things. And this text is a source of many ideas and things to research about that. And I found it so practical to find that how Iranian thinks about the political matters outside of Iran and inside in Iran. And the focus on just travelers and the words import to Iran, it's a new project by itself. And I don't know how to explain it. It's some quotes and some short words.
How would you define the Iranian cultural sphere? What is included within it?
Mm, mm, Cultural sphere in Iranian. Uh, Iranian cultural sphere lies in its ability to balance its rich traditions with demands of modernity and globalization. And in cultural sphere among the Iranian, mm, uh, I believe it. I believe it a lighter future for them because I saw the movement like women life freedom that highlights the dynamic interplay between a cultural heritage and progressive change. I think the Iranian now, in the cultural sphere, wants the progressive change because a new generation embrace both their historical roots and a contemporary ideals. And Iranian cultural sphere is likely to remain a vibrant and evolving space for intellectual, artistic, and political expressions. And I think the future is light and better than now.
So I asked about the Iranian cultural sphere because I want to contrast that with um, what Spengler called Magian civilization. So I've talked to some people who think that it's better to speak of the Magian civilization or the Magian cultural sphere because that can include religious minorities and ethnic minorities that are within the wider Islamic region. So for Westerners like me, basically you think of the Islamic world as a monolith and it's all the same. But obviously then you learn a little bit more and you learn that there are a lot of religious minorities and a lot of ethnic minorities, and it's a very much a patchwork, just like the West is or most other places are. So what do you think of the concept of a Magian civilization or a Magian cultural sphere?
Oh, first of all, I want to say that the term Magian, can be offensive word to Iranians because it carries historical connotations that evoke Arab dominance over Persian culture and language during the early Islamic period. And for many Iranians, this term undermined the distinctiveness of Persian contributions to the broader cultural and intellectual landscape of the region. Um, Instead of capturing Iran's complexity, it's flattened its rich heritage in a generalized and a reductive category. And this highlights the importance of using a culturally sensitive and contextuality accurate framework when discussing Iran's unique historical and cultural identity. Beside that, I think the concept of making cultural sphere attempts to capture shared cultural and religious dynamic across Islamic and minorities communities. Its application to Iran is problematic. The term risks oversimplifying Iran's distinct cultural and historical identity, which is deeply rooted in pre-Islamic Persian traditions, such as Zoroastrian, as you say, alongside its later Islamic influence. And this unique synthesis of Persian and Islamic elements had shaped Iran's intellectual, cultural, and political development. And it's so different from its Arab neighbors and other part of the Islamic world. And if I want to be honest, I want to say that we have two Islams in the Middle East area, Iranian Islam and Arab Islam. And the Iranian Islam totally differ from the Arab Islam. It's not about, for example, some nationality matters, and not at all, because the Zoroastrian impact on the Iranian belief of the Islam is so important. Oh, I want to say that, of course, there are many books about that, and Shaul Shaked, in his research, emphasized that the Iranian Islam stemmed from Zoroastrianism, in particular in dualism in Zoroastrianism, continues in the Islamic belief among the Iranian, as it's totally different from the Arab and the neighbors of the Iran, and these differences everything affect on everything among the Iranian culture, Iranian sphere, Iranian social and political matters. It's affected any part of the Iranian's life, and it's continue up to now. Um, because of this fact, the react to the modernism among the Iranian differ from, for example, the other Islamic worlds.
Mhm.
And I want to consider these differences between two parts of the Islam.
Do you see the Magian concept as something then imposed by the Arab cultural sphere or something imported from the West via Spengler or any other text that happened to include it?
Oh, I know Spengler's,
Spengler.
yeah. Used this concept for a cultural sphere and some consider the minority communities and so on. But the Iranian, because of this, I mentioned before that because of this term, they react to this term and try to make their their communities with some specific word. And I understand this notice, but I want to say that it's not a work. It doesn't work for Iranian culture sphere with this word because it's so offensive.
What relationship do you see between contemporary traditionalism in Iran and the various historical legacies? So there's ancient Persian civilization, there's, as you said, Zoroastrianism, and there's the Muslim world. So you have these various traditions. Do they synthesize in a kind of traditionalism, or do they pull people in different directions depending on where they're from and what their influences are?
Oh, as I said, traditionalism in Iran is deeply intertwined with the legacy of Persian civilization, of course, which has preserved cultural and ethical values over millennia. Zoroastrian principle of justice, for example, order and duality have left lasting imprints on Iranian thought even after the advent of Islam. And the synthesis of the pre-Islamic and Islamic traditions defines Iranians' traditionalism, which continues to adapt and evolve in response to modern influences. And I think we witnessed the failure of this encounter traditionalism and modernism. And I think in the future we have to say how to origin its traditionalism in Iran because the roots of traditionalism so weak today. And the new generation rejected all the sign of the tradition in Iran, and um, it's a natural react to the government and to the state, to the Islamic State, which focus on the sign of Islam and tradition, and the new generation don't want this sign and this this approach to the life. They want to be follow the modern trend around the world, like others individual in other countries, and it's happened in the future, I think.
As it has happened in many nation states.
Yeah.
So, do you think, you mentioned the Zoroastrian conception of justice being influential in Iranian history. Do you think that's fundamentally that can be reconciled with modern influences that have arrived since then, or that there's a clash that has to be resolved in some kind of difficult way, or that they can be brought together in a fairly seamless and coherent way?
Wow, I have no ideas about that, but Zoroastrians have have important impact on the Iranian thought. Uh, Maybe we are unconsciousness about that, but there are many signs that it's shaped our thought, our life, even after Islam's advance. But I don't know. I can saw a clash between Western political ideals and traditional Islamic and Zoroastrian framework and so on, but I don't know how to explain this complicated process and the complexity between them. If there are many clash between the side of these ideas in the many layers, but I don't know how to explain that because it's so complicated. Complicated.
So, do you think that industrialization and, of course, our pervasive contemporary communications technology has impacted traditionalism in Iran? You mentioned that young people have largely rejected traditionalism. Is that rejection something that's shallow and fashionable, or is it indicative of some deeper currents that are moving within the society?
Industrialization and the use of communication technology, as you say, have a positive and negative impact on our traditionalism in Iranian cultural sphere. I think had a dual impact, challenging and reinforcing. Industrialization and the new technology reshape the traditionalism in Iranian cultural sphere. Maybe some generations reject some sign of traditionalism, but it's not. But in some way fostering hybrid cultural forms and maybe providing tools for preserving of traditional practices. For example, tonight is a Yalda among Iranian as the longest night, and they celebrated it. And new generation celebrate it by by their way, not like their parents and their ancestors. But I think it's an effect of the industrialization and use of the new technology, and it has a dual impact and reflect the adaptability and resilience of Iranian cultural identity in a rapidly changing world. A new generation make a new road for themselves. Of course, they rejected some part of traditionalism, in particular the restriction part, and make their way, as you say, like other new generation in other society.
So you have a direct experience of the youth in Iran because you were a teacher or professor. How did your students respond to your use of Koselleck and conceptual history in your courses on Iranian history?
Uh, I my students in university were so amazing and brilliant student. Being a student in Iran differs from other countries because there are many restrictions for researching and for studying the new materials, and they make their way like in other sphere. But it was an amazing method and the amazing theorician for my student, according to my experience. because they're familiar with the micro level lens to find the meaning of the word and what's how important it is. And when you say the concepts can be important, then the organizations and institutions, everybody says, "Oh, no, no way, it is impossible. How can we, for example, how can we explain the history with the concepts?" But my students try to find an important word and concept for themselves and follow it in a history. And it was the amazing class for me and for them, because I witnessed, oh wow, so important concepts they choose for their project. And it was amazing. They found it so a practical way to find the meaning of the history, because as you know, there are two type of historiography. For example, official historiography and undocumented history. And they focus on the undocumented history, for example, oral history, and try to find the transformation of the meaning of word. For example, some of them use the important word, their name even. For example, the Shadi as an Iranian name, Iranian girl's name means happy. And she tried to find the meaning and the transformation of the meaning of her names in a history, and how it's affect to the some structure. It was amazing, and I encourage them to follow their, for example, their interest in political science with the concepts, political concepts. And I think it can shape our idea and our attitude to the political academic field. It was a good experience.
There's a sense in which this the research into oral history could be turn people toward traditionalism, because it basically you're short-circuiting the historical process. So instead of learning from the most recent books, you're going way back in history to something that precedes written history, insofar as it's been preserved in oral history. Do you see anything like that?
Um, I think yes, and I don't want to simplify everything in this short talk. Uh, mm, and I I generally agree with you, but I can't explain how it works and how we connect between oral history and traditionalism. There are many documents in Iran which didn't consider as a historical resources. For example, autobiography and the words right on the wall in the revolutions, and the propagandas. There are many texts and documented that didn't consider as a valuable documentation.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, there are a connection between traditionalism and oral history, but trace and tracking some concept among this big data, it's so amazing, and you can find how the meaning of word change, and how this change affect our attitude to the political sphere. For example, we speak about justice, about the freedom, about the law, about the individual right, about the woman right, and every single concept has the unique meaning, the unique effect on the political sphere, and the tracking this concepts, it's so valuable, I think.
Let me suggest something to you and just get your reaction to it, because I'm curious what you think about this. there's been a lot of talk over the last few years about civilization states. Uh, and particularly, people mention Russia and China in this connection as nation states that have inherited effectively the entire tradition of a particular civilization. So when it comes to civilization states, three nation states that interest me a lot are Greece, Egypt, and Iran, because each is related to an ancient civilization that played a very big role in the ancient world. But so in Egypt, there's almost nothing left of Egyptian civilization. Now, I just learned today that the Coptic language uh, was preserved into the modern world, and that's somewhat continuous with ancient Egyptian. The Greek tradition is, uh, that's the fundamental. East versus West is the Greeks versus the Persians, which is recounted in Herodotus, of course. So there's something left of the Greek tradition in addition to the language that has been inherited by later developments of Western civilization. So you can also see that Iran as you've been talking about, is an inheritor of Persian civilization and other ancient traditions. So, what do you think about seeing these nation states as like the what remains of an ancient civilization, as opposed to something that's a modern nation state with minimal relationships to this. How do you think that that has any validity in Iran? It is part of a civilization state, or is that something that's not really relevant?
Oh, it's so critical questions, and there is many debate among Iranian scholars about these questions. What I personally think, um, the, the meaning of the nation among the Iranian is so different with the other languages. We said that as an Iranian, we are the nations from the ancient period, and now we are the nation yet. And it doesn't matter who govern us and who is the governor, who is the first person in this regime. It, there is a reality, and that is we are the nation. And I think some of part of Iranian civilization continue up to now, and it doesn't matter, about the states and the government, because we said that there aren't new words. We are the empire in the ancient world, Iranian empire. But now, for example, it's a Islamic republic, and it's the shape of the state. But about the nationality, we are sure that we are the nation, we are Iranian, and we appreciated this part of our civilization. And we think that as Iranian, our thought during the history continue up to now. And we are we learned many things from the ancestors, but the word of civilization among the Iranian, I see every concept according to the conceptual history lenses. Because of the Islamic regimes, use this word as Islamic civilization and
Yeah.
try to ignore the Persian part of this civilization, is its meaning the negative among the Iranian, and they want to reject it, that no, we are Iranian as a people, as a society, as a nation, and we admire the Iranian part of that, and we're proud of the Iranian roots. But uh, I personally believe this civilization continue up to date, up to now, and there are many many cut among the duration of this long period. But of course, we use this civilization, and culturally, I can't, reinforce it and strengthen it. It's not about the power and how to dominance to other cultural things and so on, but I think it has effect on our belief, our the lifestyle, our thinking, our words, our languages, everything continue up to now. And of course, I'm proud of that, and I think it's we transferred it to the next generation.
Both the terms or concepts of nationhood and civilization are, of course, deeply um, uh, I don't know if I could say divisive, but they're certainly debated. So, you were saying that there's a very different conception of nationhood in Iran versus, say the West. Though, these aren't clearly even defined well in the West. I mean, nation at least is an ancient word that goes back to natio in the Latin, which means to be born. So it's a group of people who have a biological relationship to each other. Civilization wasn't introduced until the 18th century during the Enlightenment, and there's no common definition of that now. So, we're really at sea using terms that different people have different definitions of. So we have to try to clarify what it is we're talking about, and that's one of the things that makes the talk about civilization states so interesting, because it brings together these two ideas of nationhood and civilization, but we don't really can't define those either. So how can we define the conjunction of the two?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I totally agree with you. There are many definitions and many aspects of civilization as a concept, as a as a phenomena, and it's important to consider that.
And when you consider you weren't talking about this in conjunction with traditionalism, but the fact that there is an Iranian nation that you inherited from the past and you want to pass on into the future, that is another sense of tradition, another sense of the wanting to have that for your people is another sense of traditionalism. It might not be, this might sound weird, it might not be traditionalism, but is it a form of traditionalism?
Hmm.
It's also a form of traditionalism that the study of oral traditions might put the people in touch with, you could say.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I understand what you say, but among Iranian, of course, as far as I know, as Iranian people, there are differences between traditionalism and for example, Persian the civilization, and I don't consider two of these in a same row, and I don't know how to explain that, but traditionalism in Iran many have a potential to interpret it as a different things. And as far as I think about that, about the traditionalism, in these traditions, it's not overlap totally to civilization. It's a part of the mixture of Islamic ideas and Iranian ideas, Zoroastrianism, and so on. But it's not totally overlap each other. And when I said about the nationhood or being a nation among Iranian, it's related to the traditions, our, for example, the history, but it's not totally overlapped to that. And as I said before, some new generation in Iran rejects some part of the traditionalism, in particular the political aspect. Oh, the part that wants, the as as the traditionals don't admire and accept the individual right, for example, they want the people as a whole, and they want to be act, as a whole, not a person. And according to the wants and will of the new generation, they want the individual right for themselves, and the traditional doesn't accept this right. Or about the woman, according to the Iranian tradition, the woman has no right, uh, even Iranians and Zoroastrians, they limited and restricted the woman for example, having job, learning, and so on. When I say the constitutional revolution is a real revolution, because for first time, 100 years ago, in the rural society in Iran, in a traditional society, it's said that the woman can go to the, for example, the schools, can to learn. Before that, they have no right to write, to read, to learn. Even, uh, they are don't consider as a human even. And after these constitutional revolutions, this traditionalism crashed and under questions. After that, women have to write, to learn, to go to the school, to have a role in the society, even have to choose some part. Of course, somebody says it's so, for example, tiny rights for women, so small, right? But in this society, 100 years ago in Iran, with the rich, powerful of the tradition, it's so big achievement. And of course, we are not rejected all of part of the traditionalism. We preserve some part of that we can adopt with the new modern era, and rejected some part of the restrictions. And Iranian and Persian civilization, like other civilization, has positive and negative part, like Greek civilization or Egyptian, as you said, that I don't know many about that, but I know, for example, they lose their languages and they change, for example, some part of the civilization. But Iranian try focus on even on their languages and to preserve it. Some cultural celebration, preserve it. And
Yeah.
for example, some sign of their history. And the new generation admire this part of civilization, in particular about the language, the words, the some names, the some celebration like tonight. And of course, it's differences of the Iranian civilization with others. And like other Iranians are proud of this history. Of course, it has a negative part. I don't ignore that. And, I'm not chauvinist or, for example, a radical nationalist and say, oh, yeah, we are the best around the world and blah, blah. But I want to say that consciously we want to preserve some part of our civilization and our language preserved during the long history. And it is a so amazing achievement for us as Iranian civilization. And I believe that this civilization continue without any, without any related to the state. And I know in a Western, the nation state is one word, and but it doesn't work among Iranian, and it's not related to the Iranian history. We had the nation, and after that, after making the nation state in Western, and about the history of this word and concept after 17th century, if I'm not mistaken, but in Iran it doesn't work. Now we have government, and the people have governed to the people, but it's not real estate. It's not like a state around the other worlds. Yeah, we are a country, and the other countries recognize us as a country, but the states and it, I don't know how to say. It's not. There are no similar with the, for example, a state in the, for example, United States or Canada and Europe, England, and so on. Our nationhood is different from the nation state. And I think it's different. It's because of our history, our rich history, because of the Iranian civilization, and maybe it's not true, but it's my belief.
Well, we can add tradition to the list of disputed concepts along with nationhood
Yeah,
and civilization.
yeah,
But as you say, these things they overlap, but they don't completely coincide,
yeah.
and that might be in our favor insofar as people can, people who are want to distance themselves from the political turmoil of changing nation states, they can still immerse themselves in art and language, literature, cuisine, and these other expressions of tradition or culture, whatever you want to call it, and still have this intact tradition for themselves. And maybe even the most wrenching changes aren't necessarily the political revolutions that have been going on since the late 18th century, but just as much industrialization, which tears people up from their agrarian roots and puts them in large cities where people don't know their neighbors, and it's a radically different way of life that challenges all those things that a people has in common with their ancestors and with their descendants, the things that I just named off, like language and food and culture and etc.
Yeah, exactly. I want to point out the cultural continuity. Iran's ancient traditions, such as Nowruz, as you maybe know, Yalda, have been celebrated for thousands of years and remain integral to Iranian identity. And it's a so important part of our cultural continuity. Or for example, other part of adoption and evolutions. For example, remarkable adaptability, integrating modern innovations into our cultural framework. Without losing its root. It's so important part of that our civilization. But we don't. I don't want to overlap these two, traditionalism and civilization, as you said.
Well, that's part of the work that remains to be done is
Yeah.
getting a clear understanding of which is what you've been trying to do in conceptual history, get a clear understanding of these concepts and how they've unfolded and developed differently in different cultural milieu.
Oh, in the future, you know, uh, conceptual history and cultural. Oh, I think, I personally think there is significant scope for a comparative analysis between, for example, Western and non-Western concepts. And, as you said about the traditionalism, civilization, and other concepts, and when we speak about that, there is no consensus about the meaning of them. And I think the conceptual history is a tool, and we can analyze this comparison. And it's amazing. This approach highlights, for example, how the same concept can take on the different meaning, trajectories, implication in varying cultural and historical contexts, and it's amazing. For example, I work on the Middle East as a concept in a research, and I explore the meaning behind the term middle. When we say Middle East, what is the meaning of the middle? Who defines the center? And what is the purpose that? For example, as a European person, an American person, when you say Middle East, you say, "Oh, okay, it's a concept, it's a regular concept, other like other concept." But for me, as a person who live in Middle East, for example, it's a differing meaning. And some such comparative studies are not only challenging some assumptions about the for example, Eurocentric, and so on, and also provide a richer understanding of how concepts shape and are shaped by global power dynamics. And the second, I want to focus on the integration of um, digital tools for linguistic analysis and interdisciplinary method offers. And it's a new possibility for conceptual history. I don't know any scholars in conceptual history use the new method and the new technology, for example, text mining, big data analysis, computational linguistics, and I don't know anybody use the new method in conceptual history or not, but I want to focus on identify pattern in the use of transformation of concept across time and space. I know the new technology and method can, for example, uncover subtitles and shift in meaning that may not be immediately visible, for example, throughout the traditional approaches. If you want to read, for example, some thousands page of the documentation, it's so it's time wasting. But the technology is combined with interdisciplinary, for example, collaboration could open up a new version for exploring the evolution of ideas, for example, in Western or non-Western context, and it's a potential. Of course, I don't know anybody use it or not, but I want to explore about that.
Yes, well, it sounds like a bright future for conceptual history and lots of research directions for yourself.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Now I want to focus on the, in one of the class, I focus on the Middle East by the student. It was a question, what is the middle and what's the meaning of the middle? And I dip into the word of the meaning. And we know the history, how made of this concept. But the question is, why this concept continue up to now? For example, we had the Middle East, Near East, and Far East. But the Near and Far East, didn't use after the period of the time. But the Middle East remained. What's the reason of the remaining this word? And
That's a
it's
good idea.
yeah,
That's
and
a good thing to notice.
yeah, yeah.
I guess you still do find the terms, but they're what you maybe verging on archaic, whereas the Middle East is much less. In fact, there's the recent acronym MENA, MENA, for Middle East and North Africa to try to rope these areas together
Uh,
a
yeah,
cultural sphere.
I focus on this the new operation MENA, for example, the try to use another word, and surprisingly, the website which they use the word instead of the Middle East have to open the bracket and explain it's the title for the Middle East, and you know again use the Middle East, and there is no escape from this word, and it's amazing. When you open the website which try to use the alternatives, and you can see they open the bracket, and the bracket is North Africa and Middle East, and why you write Middle East, and when you use the abbreviation, and it was an amazing scope for research. And I think that this comparison and this challenging among the concepts, it's a potential in conceptual history method.
And shed light on the concepts we're using now and the concepts we may yet come to form in the future.
Yeah,
Well, I'd really like to thank you for this talk and your contributions to conceptual history, and I'm very pleased that you could come here today.
thank you so much. It was amazing for me because I have to think about the critical questions. Thank you for this opportunity, and I have a good night.
Thank you very much. and we will talk with you later.
Thank you. Bye.